This morning, I arrived here bright and early after seeing our wonderful folks off on their Mother's Day march for peace. And I realized I had to rewrite the opening of my sermon because what I felt in my body still thrumming was what took place here last night. I've already mentioned it. We enjoyed a beautiful meal together. You had been talking about potlucks for a long time, and I'm so glad they've returned to us this past year, but that really was a potluck. And I know you all have waited a long time to get to return to those. And sitting in this packed sanctuary, singing, y'all. Remember when we couldn't sing? You can hum, we would say. The top of, so please don't sing, you can hum. Impossible. And dancing and laughing and hugging one another without some sort of like strategic, you're supposed to hug, like breathe. Oh. So sweet. So sweet was what I was sitting with this morning. And so much sweeter after having lived through what we have, made all that much sweeter. I can't help in moments like these, and I was thinking this last night sitting where you are sitting now, I can't help but to return to what this time was 3 years ago, the spring of 2020, when on Mother's Day, May, this sanctuary was empty. And the world felt so tilted. I can't help these days as we continue to return to one another, to take a beat and lift up some praise, just a bit. Oh my. And I know that we are not healed from this, and many of us are still not okay. And let us not forget to lift up some praise. But I had been this past week thinking already of the springtime in 2020. And I was thinking about what got me through. I'm so grateful for some of those pandemic storytelling gatherings that we had a month or so ago, where you all shared what got you through. And I've heard over the years so many different stories about how folks survived this time and even found their way to some thriving. Some, not all. But how you all survived. And if I could distill some of these stories down, this is just a simple pass. I would say that art and music is a common way that most survived in all the forms of art, right? Staying connected to people in some way, through the creative ways we all found to keep some sort of thread tied between us. And time spent in nature. I see heads, nature. These are what I hear about most as lifesavers. And so often nature being a common denominator, expressed in art, sung in music, enjoyed with people, or a place many of us went to find some peace and sanity and meaning, for we needed meaning, alone in nature. And here is a delight from April of 2020. So it was about 3-ish or so weeks into the world has tilted, right? A public health announcement out of Iceland began sweeping the media. I'm not sure that Icelandic press does this much, go viral, but this did. On April 10th, 2020, the Icelandic Forestry Service launched a nationwide public health announcement with this headline: Forest Service recommends hugging trees while you can't hug others. But it wasn't a joke or a fluff piece. It was a public health announcement. Forestry rangers across Iceland were given the mission and task of clearing snow-covered paths to ensure that people could get to the trees. A forest ranger was quoted in this public health announcement as saying, quote, "When you hug a tree, you feel it first in your toes, and then up your legs, and into your chest, and then up into your head. Close your eyes," he said, "while you're hugging a tree. I lean my cheek up against the trunk and feel the warmth and the currents flowing from the tree into me. You can really feel it," he says. And then another ranger offered the prescription at the end: people should take their time to reap the full benefits of their tree hugging. 5 minutes is really good. You can also do it many times a day. That wouldn't hurt, but once a day will definitely do the trick. Definitely. And by April 17th, a mere 7 days after the announcement went out, this was picked up by every major media outlet around the world. Like the big ones, like BBC big ones, right? Not counting the endless shares and retweets on social media, which is how it came to me through Facebook. And I remember thinking when I read it, amid all the thinking and overthinking that we ministers do about what was needed, damn, maybe when you get down to it, the root of this thing called life, all the questions and mysteries and needs and hopes, religion and humanity's great purpose, so many arguments and divisions and opinions, maybe it all comes down to this: that when all feels hopeless, hugs are the most important of things, and when human hugs aren't available, wrapping your arms around a tree trunk, pressing your cheek up against it, closing your eyes and feeling the warmth and the currents flow into your body, that maybe, to quote the Hokey Pokey song, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Have any of you ever done this? Yeah. I'm going to make it everyone's homework for the week. 5 minutes a day will definitely do the trick, said the forest ranger. How terribly cliche of me, your UU ministers trying to convert you into being tree huggers. But I know I'm not alone here, right? We heard some stories last night that help us to know that there might be some tree huggers in our midst. Yeah. But in all seriousness, that moniker tree hugger, which has been reduced to jokes and caricatures and stereotypes, some of you might think that landed in the 60s and 70s out of hippie culture, but it actually comes from India in the early 1700s. Right around 1730, 350 or so men and women belonging to the Bishnoi branch of Hinduism died while attempting to protect the trees in their village. They literally clung to the trees that foresters cut down to build a palace with, and afterwards were referred to and sadly became jokingly known as tree huggers. Isn't that something? We have a lot to learn from hippie culture. It's actually, I think, one of the most important movements of our time. Important to note here is that one of the most fundamental and guiding principles of Hindu theology is that there's no separation between the divine and the world of nature. Because of this, Hindus revere rivers and mountains, animals, trees as sacred, worth dying for, and treat them as such. They weren't just clinging to trees back then. They were clinging to God huggers. And I can't help, in discovering this story, I can't help but think about the great naturalist John Muir, who left his strict Scottish Presbyterian home in the Midwest and practically walked to California, arriving in the Yosemite Valley in 1830, where he said, "This glorious valley might well be called a church. For every lover of the great Creator who comes within the broad, overwhelming influences of the place fails not to worship as they never did before. All the world turns into religion," he wrote. "The mountains altars, the pine trees preach. And so," he says, "I might go on writing words, 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 but to what purpose? Go see God and love God, and through God as a window, look into nature's heart. Look into nature's heart. Read nature as a sacred text. Story stones." You know, our UU faith has been holding a really important question that has confounded so many for so long. What is at the center of our faith? What will, after all, hold us with our varied beliefs and non-beliefs? Is there a unity that can be found amid our theological diversity? Is it possible in this wacky experiment we call Unitarian Universalism? And so many of our best and wisest minds these past few decades are warning us. They are warning us that if we don't get clear about this theological center point and what this is and get fluent in it, we risk fizzling out as a faith. And there is a theological unity to be found among us that binds us. There is. I think you know where I'm going. In the book Justice on Earth, this was our faith's congregational read in 2018. It comes down from the UUA, and we hope as congregations that we read it and engage with it. 2018. Reverend Sherry Prudhomme, who's a celebrated scholar of transcendentalist theology and philosophy, She wrote about our UU faith as being united by what she calls eco-theology, which she defines as belief in the radical interdependence and divinity of all existence. So there's a bit of our seventh principle in there, right? And that the accompanying mandate in this is to view humankind as embedded in this complex web of relationships with other organisms. And she puts forward the idea of healing, liberative, and unifying possibility coming from God and earth, which is a word for all life, including us. God and earth as being interchangeable words. Interchangeable words. Eco-theology. We can get behind this. I think we can get behind this. Yeah, I don't think we're divided on this. For who among us has not marveled at the majesty, the inexplainable mutuality and power of this regenerative, phenomenal, healing, hopeful earth, creatively unfolding and adapting for billions and billions of years. Cells replicating, rivers forming and forging new tributaries, tectonic plates creating mountains, oceans rising and receding, human hands, yours and mine and our ancestors, building and inventing and sculpting and storytelling, moving and migrating and painting and singing. Yes, mountains are altars. Pine trees preach. We UUs can get behind this. We've got a center. I believe our work as UUs is to apply a clear and guiding language of faith and reverence to this shared marveling. Make a sacred text out of it. Get fluent in our eco-theological faith, fluency. Intentionally revere it as sacred. And let it guide our actions, interactions, and work for justice and healing. Imagine for a moment, friends, if we believed every living thing to be sacred. From trees to bees to waterways to food and animals, soil, sea, bodies, human bodies, people, heavenly, all heavenly bodies. Imagine. Knew ourselves to be of the same heavenliness. Imagine. I sense that if we truly believed this, could get behind this, and I think we can, every encounter, every purchase we made, everything we ate, all that we fought for and on behalf of would be motivated by a ferocious, faithful protection of the most holy, not unlike our tree-hugging siblings in India. Collective crisis, that pandemic, it really put our minds, it put my mind, and I know I'm not alone here, you are wise. It put our minds in touch with the most important stuff. It really did. Like, what do you believe? What do you need? What is worth fighting for? Everything else, it just faded. I call it the filler and the fodder. It just faded. Go hug a tree for 5 minutes. Make art, make music. Connect in some way. This week, while the bounty of spring and life explodes around you, no matter how you are doing, what you are holding, what you are grieving, I hope that you will take some comfort and solace in it, for it is there for you to be comforted by. And take a bit of time to also lift up some praise, worship it as the church of the earth. Learn from it. Read it as you would a sacred text, for it is. Listen to it, lay in it, breathe it in, dig your fingers in, lick them if you need to. See what happens. It might taste great. Hug it. Hug it. Pray it, praise it, and mostly move gently with reverence upon it as you would the most sacred of grounds. That is my prayer and message to you. And know that you are also the most sacred of grounds. So be gentle with yourselves as well. That is also my prayer for you this week. And I would say all weeks. And as I close this bit of time, I'd like to return to our wonderful poet's wisdom, where he writes about amor, the more, M-O-O-R, the more. It was like a church to me. I entered it on soft foot, breath held like a cap in the hand. It was quiet. What God was there made themselves felt, not listened to, in clean colors that brought a moistening of the eye, in movement of the wind over grass. There were no prayers said. I walked on, simple and poor, while the air crumbled and broke on me generously as bread. It was like church to me. May it be so, it is so, and I say to you, amen.